All right, let's move on to the next book, which is Fear and Courage. There's a lot of really good information as to, I'm assuming you wrote this during COVID, about fear influenced by emotion and courage influenced by reasoning. So
what was your motivation for writing the book? Did it have to do with the presence of COVID, or did you have the idea long before that?
It had to do with the consequence of the pandemic, the consequence, how people confront the unknown. That's the main thing, because we are in a society that have been trained, educated, culturally raised to know only the known, but not the unknown. And COVID came as something completely unknown and got us as a surprise. And COVID extracted the most intimate feeling of fear in everybody. And people didn't know how to confront it. Why is that? Even that in the past, in 1919, and not even a long time ago,
yeah, we've had viruses before.
people confront those situations. But people at those time in the past, civilization, and even in current civilization, but in the past, people were less urban. They were more rural. And when they are in the rural area, you are confronting the reality of life. The division between living and death is not big. And what I call there is a more of biocentrism. You mean more into nature. So, and also those civilizations or those societies tend to be with a more collective purpose, a more coalescent. So therefore fear is diminished as compared to what is today. So that's what I say. And also another thing that I noticed was that despite we living in a technological era, I was really amazed to see how much of ritualism, how much of mysticism, how much of fetishism was exacerbated in this era of so much supposedly knowledge-based culture.
Why, that's a good question. Why is that? I mean, there was conspiracy theories, there were people who are anti-vaxxers, there's people who are getting a lot of misinformation and believing the misinformation. Why?
What you say is due to the lack of knowledge base.
But there is a knowledge out there. There is a lot of access to knowledge.
No, there is a lot of access to information,
Information, good point.
but not to
Good
knowledge.
point, Good point.
Not to knowledge.
Yeah.
Because today, people are satisfied with Googling. For instance, when you want to know the fundamental of anything, including science, to really understand how the mechanism, you have to be very focused to understand the knowledge, not just the information.
Okay.
And that's what is lacking today. Today we have a society with a lot of information and perhaps with more tools, but the capacity, which is the integration of the effective use of our intelligent information, is not there.
So critical thinking is what you're talking about. There's
Correct.
no critical thinking.
Correct.
Yeah.
So there is no capacity. The capacity has been diminished.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for instance, in the ancient civilizations, whatever people did in ancient civilization was for surviving the necessity of life. But today, we have many things that we don't need it for surviving.
Right.
We just need it for prestige, perhaps. We just need it for have sovereignty power, or we just need it to be over somebody else, or perhaps for profit, perhaps. So people have reduced the capacity, even that they have more access
So
to different tools. In past civilization or society, they were more
How How
attracted to
were
capacity.
you able to take what you had already observed about people in your past research and new research you did for this book? How were you able to synthesize those, as well as with your observations about how people were reacting to the pandemic, to create the premise of your book?
Good question. I love it. 3 things. Number 1, I grew up lacking the tools and availability that we have today. As a matter of fact, in a scarce environment, economically speaking, socially speaking, and survival, as a poor individual. But I had to use my capacity to survive. And also, the other point on those things is that I have to, that was my idiosyncratic attitude. I want to say in everybody. I had to say, even if I had knowledge or information, I had to go beyond what I see. And that's when I decide to be more, better observant and creative person. And that's helped me a lot. And the other part was that I confront a lot of diseases, viral diseases when I was growing up, and also all the parasitic diseases like malaria. And that was a common thing because when I grew up, about 40% of children died. That was a common thing. Yeah, and everybody was under the same predicament. So when everyone's under the same predicament, it becomes like a part of the culture, and you don't have much fear, but you have the courage to survive that situation. That's very important. And also traveling around the world, as I had done. I've been all over the world, all the continents. For many years I've been traveling, and I realized that there are 2 types of societies. The one who is very elusive, who try to deny facts, and by using fetishism and exacerbating rituals, which I was part of that, but later through my creativity, I moved away from that, and I'm glad that I did it. Although that I celebrate, I do certain rituals. And also the other society who use reasoning. And I noticed that the society with reasoning is a society that I had noticed through all my experiences and through my reading, the society that continued to be the society leading the world. And also that the society who also did it better for surviving the pandemic.
Do you think that your past observations, growing up in this way, your travels, is part of why you wrote a book that's less about biology and tangible science and more about the intangible things like fear and courage?
Fear and courage is not intangible. Fear and courage is tangible. You got to remember, I'm going to give you a tangibility of it. Past civilization, they were also embedded in fetishism. For instance, Alexander the Great, he believed in fetishism, but his professor was Aristotle. But he used it for imagination, but when he went to the world to fight, he used practicality, reasoning that he learned from his professor. And so you got that duality always, and for existence, the one of reasoning and the one of mysticism. That have been normal in people, like a yin yang. You have to have those two, you know. And also like the great ethnologists, you know, Joseph Campbell say, you know, rituals is the cementation of our society. But you cannot mystify ritual. You use ritual as a way to decompress yourself, but you have to maintain the reasoning. You see, and then another reality is you have a society made out of migrants. And you have a migrants, and you also have what people call a refugee. But what people call migrant is the legal immigrant. And what they call a refugee is the illegal immigrant. But both have been displaced. Both have been displaced voluntarily or by force. But what happened is, societies in the past, they were geocentric. They don't have to go, even the people, human beings always have been in diaspora, but nevertheless voluntarily and circumventing around the same area. So they have a geocentrism. Geocentrism, which means you are centered into a territory. That is a very instinctive for every society. And then you have ethnocentrism. That means you are centered into ethnic group. That came after people lost their territory. They become into tribal and also become very, very close to each other. But before it was a geographic area with circus make you sense of belonging. And so you have today those refugees, let's say immigrants, when they are displaced and they arrive to a certain place, they continue to be with fear because they are afraid to be displaced again. That's one of the biggest confrontation of any immigrant and especially refugee, afraid to be displaced. That is what I said. Civilization of the past were not fearful, but civilization of today and the future are going to be fearful. This because whoever is illegal immigrant today or refugee, of course, like it always has happened, is going to be the normal citizen of a particular nation or society. But it's going to be carried by fear they're going to be displaced again.
So using this knowledge, what do you think are some of the biggest lessons that you want to teach the next generation of how to instill courage within them?
Wonderful, wonderful question. Fear is a ladder toward courage. Fear is still fear. Courage is still courage. But you have to transform fear into courage. And the only thing from my experience, personal experience, from what I have seen throughout the world, is that you must give people the opportunity of ownership. I don't talk about ownership of building or home or territory. Ownership, that means his ideas, his thinking, that own his own thinking. But when you suppress people or you suppress people, he don't have to have he doesn't have his sense of belonging. So he's always fearful. And the other part is that you have to stimulate creativity. That is what in my book, How to Create the Just Creativity, explain very well one of the biggest reason for young people to be fearful today is because the capacity is not there. And the capacity is not there not because they are not intelligent, not because they are not good. It's because they have not had the opportunity to exercise the sense of ownership of their ideas and creativity. We must emphasize creativity at the family level, at the school level, in society, in all levels. Creativity.
Okay, you created Park of Creativity.